days of sales outstanding. Let's start where we left off with the last video. In the last video, we discussed that a company might actually increase its performance by improving its asset turnover, the last ratio we discussed. So asset turnover, increasing asset turnover meant that we try to get our sales going without actually having a lot of assets. And we discussed that cash could be one reason why you have lots of assets, lots of fixed assets could be another reason. And we then enter now the third component, why your assets compared to your net sales actually look a bit on the high side, bringing down the asset turnover. So days of sales outstanding, what is the issue there? The issue there is, I would like to know after how many days do your customers pay their invoices on average. So if you want to compare two companies and want to find out when do people actually pay their invoices, it doesn't make sense to actually go on the balance sheet and compare the absolute amount of accounts receivable company 1 has in the balance sheet and company 2 has in the balance sheet. Why does it make sense? Because company 1 might have a very different size, might be able to sell much more, have higher net sales than company 2. So again, we need a relative metric, which actually tells us after how many days customers pay. The definition is relatively straightforward. You ask yourself, how many receivables do you have in your balance sheet? And you actually compare this to the net sales. While you compare it, it's actually a bit more tricky than that. If you actually see what you do is, let's assume in our example here, we have net sales of $730 in a given year. Now, if you sell for $730 in a year, and if I assume that the year actually has 360 or 365 days, depending where you live, continental Europeans tend to actually assume for this calculation 360 days, whereas the rest of the world takes 365 days, which makes more sense. So let's assume 365 days, which we actually assume as days of a year. If we now say we sold $730 in a given year, we can now divide the 730 by the 360 days, which gives us our average net sales per day. So 730 divided by 360 gives you, in this case, the fact that you sell on average $2 per day. 730 divided by 365. So now I know that I sold on average $2 per day. Then I square this with my accounts receivable. You can see we have accounts receivable of 60. So I have $60 of unpaid invoices. $60 divided by the $2 per day. That means the $60 represent 30 days of average sales. The beauty of this number, this is now a number which talks. Everybody understands it. If you calculate this number and you get, for example, for a company that this number is not 30 but 90, that is obviously then if you walk to the salespeople and say, you know, our customers only pay after 90 days. Then the obvious answer of the salespeople is, how come? It says on our invoices they should pay after 30 days. Exactly. This is the problem we have. We think that actually they should pay after 30 days, those customers, but they really only pay after 90 days in there. Now, clearly, this is a very critical number, because if we see that most small and medium-sized companies go bankrupt because they run out of cash. And why do they run out of cash? Because the big customers are paying later and later. Then we need to track this here very much, and we need to put pressure on management to collect as early as possible in there. If you talk about crisis environments, the financial crisis which we had many years ago, the Corona crisis which is hitting us, This is a critical number. Obviously, a finance person will tell you as well, the higher this number is, the higher the risk the customer will not pay at all in there, because maybe in half a year this customer is no longer around because the crisis has gotten worse and worse and worse. Yeah, so a very important number. It's also called collection period. I must say I prefer days of sales outstanding because I feel this term talks, everybody understands it. And very clearly in today's world, I would like management to optimize this number. However, keep one thing in mind. Am I saying here right now that a customer which pays late is a bad customer? Not at all. If this late paying customer is paying a price which is 20% above of what all other customers pay, and this customer is an absolutely safe bank, let's say the Swiss government, then that's fine. What I'm saying here is that a customer which pays late creates a risk for you as a business, a risk that this customer will not pay at all. And this customer creates cost. You become a bank. You're misused by your customers as a bank in there. And this is fine if the customer pays for those banking services in there and is a safe bank. But the problem is obviously customers which pay late and are not very profitable and are risky are something, as a finance guy, I feel that this is something we should try to avoid as much as possible. So summing this up again, the way we started, I would like as a finance guy to generate sales without having a lot of assets. And we talked about cash, and we talked about fixed assets. Now we're talking about very operational reasons. I would like you as a manager to think twice, how many receivables should we actually finance for our clients in there? Because these receivables cost us money and are risky in there. With the third component, which helps us to actually improve the asset turnover if we actually can get our clients to pay earlier. Which brings up now the link to the next video. The missing link now is to complete the whole balance sheet view is the inventory. And we need to do the same calculation we have been doing here for receivables for inventory in the next video.